Hey everyone, I'm Scott Cunningham, aka Scottsy Business, and today we're going to be talking about centralized exchanges and why you should never leave your cryptocurrency on an exchange. We're going to be going through the reasons why people use them to begin with, exactly what am I talking about when I say a centralized exchange, why I think you should avoid centralized exchanges to begin with, and some examples of times where there's been hacks and all these different reasons that coincide with what I'm going to show you. So I'm also going to have examples to back that up as well. We're going to be diving into all of that good stuff in a moment after a quick word from my sponsor. A big thank you and shout out to my sponsor Cake Wallet, which is an open source, non-custodial Bitcoin and Monero wallet that also has a built-in exchange. It's available on iOS and Android. Thanks again to my sponsor. So let's start off by just defining what a centralized exchange is. I've covered in the past what centralization is versus decentralization. I recently did a whole thing on DeFi, so we're not going to dive deep into why decentralization is important and decentralized exchanges, more so looking at centralized exchanges and not so much focused on the centralization aspect, but more so how your cryptocurrency is dealt with in terms of your ownership and managing your funds and all that good stuff. So a centralized exchange is very similar to stock exchanges. It has all the same kind of features, does a lot of the same stuff. The major difference is that what cryptocurrency enables is so much more than just that. So limiting yourself to using a centralized exchange kind of takes away a lot of the benefits that cryptocurrency has to offer. And namely, that is you having the true ownership and control of your funds. This was the whole point of cryptocurrency. We don't need banks anymore, all that kind of stuff. But with centralized exchanges, if you just leave your cryptocurrency on there, it's basically the same level of control and all the issues related to the banking system. So what is a centralized exchange? Well, it's all the common places that you actually trade cryptocurrency. Typically the places where you go in and out of fiat and crypto or use a credit card or whatever it happens to be. Many examples of this, Coinbase, CoinSquare, Kraken, Binance. There's a million exchanges out there. But the important thing to note is that the centralized exchanges are the ones that have a lot of these drawbacks that we're going to be going through today. But before we dive into all that, we're going to talk about the reasons why people do use centralized exchanges. So the first reason is people use it because it's easy. It's very similar to the stock trading experience. You don't need to have multiple different wallets and do all this different stuff and worry about private keys and all the complexities that cryptocurrency brings with it. Familiarity, as I just mentioned, it's very similar to the stock market. So for people who are not super savvy, it's very easy to switch over and it's very familiar. It's also familiar in terms of how they store the stocks, where the actual exchange is the one that has all of it, but they're definitely going to hold it in a legitimate way for you and there's not going to be any issues. It's also fully insured and backed in the regular stock exchange and banks. But in the crypto market, it's not fully insured. So if there was an issue like a hack or the many things that we're going to be covering very soon, you're not going to be covered for a lot of those things. So while it is familiar, that's a very important caveat. And that's not really, the familiarity is why you would, but definitely not the lack of insurance. We'll be covering that in a moment. They're feature rich. So they have all the different financial tools that you know and love when you're trading stocks, whether you're trading with leverage, options, margin, futures, anything you can think of. You'll be able to do that with not every centralized exchange because not all of them have all of these options and tools built in. But that's typically the only place that you will find that. You're not going to be able to do a lot of that kind of stuff on a decentralized exchange because it just doesn't have a lot of those capabilities. Mind you, there might be certain things out there, but nothing is going to be as extensive as a centralized exchange in comparison to what they can actually offer you. Much more convenient. There's many exchanges that have tons of different altcoins. Binance is a good example where there's just a ridiculous amount. And for many of those altcoins, it's not easy to store them outside of an exchange, or there could be, large fees moving between. Lots of different reasons why you might just be like, it's too much work to have a million different wallets to manage all this stuff. That's understandable. And those are pretty much the only reasons that I could think of as to why you would use a centralized exchange. It's probably less. Well, I mean, I would say maybe it feels less risky, but because of the stuff we're going to go through, I would actually argue that it's more risky. Either way, to each their own. I would love to hear other reasons why people use centralized exchanges below. This was just kind of off the cuff to set this up because I wanted to give a little bit for the other side, but more than likely, it's going to be very, very greatly outweighed by the cons. So some of the reasons why I avoid, or why to avoid, centralized exchanges. The biggest and most important reason is that you actually own everything when you're not leaving your crypto on an exchange. And this isn't necessarily to say that you shouldn't use exchanges, as I do. It's more so that you don't leave your cryptocurrency there. It's a good place to get your fiat in and out, but you can easily trade on decentralized exchanges, and there's really not a good reason to just leave your crypto on an exchange. Another issue is centralization and the gatekeeping that they do. So typically, they will ask you for a lot of information. You might have to provide an ID. At the end of the day, they have the final say and approval for things that are going on. You might have to wait days for a transaction. Even for platforms that aren't exchanges, again, like lending platforms like BlockFi is very popular. I had to re-KYC when I wanted to withdraw. I had to send them my ID again. And I had to wait like 3 or 4 days for this approval process. So if I urgently needed that money, I would have been screwed. But if it was just on a private wallet that I controlled, there would have been no problems, and I would have been able to just send it and do with it as I needed. Exchanges are much bigger targets for hacks. So you as an individual probably have very little money and very little identifying information for someone to even find your account and hack you. Whereas an exchange has got everyone's funds. So naturally, it's loaded with cryptocurrency, and it is a much more ideal target for a hack or some sort of, social engineering or whatever it happens to be in order to steal those funds. So they're more likely to be stolen from an exchange than an individual. And we've seen the proof of that many times over. Future regulation. So exchanges could be affected in the future by regulation that is happening, and I'm going to cover an example of that momentarily. The current lack of regulation could also be a problem because more sketchy things are able to happen, and the perpetrators are more easily able to get away with it because of the lack of regulation that we have now. And as I said, we don't have insurance and SEC and different financial institutions that regulate these kinds of things don't have a very good understanding or insight of cryptocurrency as it is today. And as I just mentioned, no insurance. So your funds are not really protected on these platforms. So not super reliable. And malicious behavior. There's been times where exchanges themselves, whether the founder or whoever it happens to be, has done something malicious that has negatively affected many, many, many people. So no exchange is above questioning or, being morally right just because they're very popular or widely used. So let's dive into some examples of why I don't like a lot of centralized exchanges and issues around them. ShakePay is a perfect example of using the marketing allure of what they're offering, which is, free crypto every day. But when you buy and sell cryptocurrency, they're selling it to you at above market price, and they're buying it from you at below market price. So it depends what you're really interested in. But to me, I would never want to be buying and selling Bitcoin at the wrong prices and paying massive upcharges for that, and you're not really seeing it unless you're looking at multiple places and then comparing. So If you're just using the platform and you're not really paying attention, you didn't really read the instructions, and I went into their FAQ and read, how do we make money? And then they outline all this. If you're not really looking into all that, you might not be getting the most amazing deals for whatever you're doing. Decentralized exchanges are much better in this aspect, in my opinion, because you're usually just getting the actual price. And there's different things that different exchanges do for marketing or whatever. And ShakePay is one good example of how, they're offering you this really cool thing, but then there's all these drawbacks that people don't usually look into. Another one is the malicious behavior from exchanges. This is probably the most widely looked at hostile takeover and widely criticized from the founder of Tron, who basically paired up with Binance, which is essentially one of the biggest exchanges in the world, if not the biggest, Huobi and Poloniex. And essentially, Justin Sun reached out to them, got user funds for the Steam blockchain, and essentially took it away from the users so they couldn't withdraw or do anything, and they were screwed. They gave the users funds to Justin to then stake and change the governance of the chain, allowing him to do a hostile takeover of an entire blockchain. So these three exchanges used mine and your funds to make governance decisions in the crypto market and on various blockchains, which had drastic effects on price, the community, all these different things. This would be unthinkable in the world of stocks, but I guess due to malicious behavior and lack of regulation, really nothing was done about this. This wasn't even like a big deal in the media, and most people didn't follow this aside from the people who were affected by this, which is a smaller crypto community, and it didn't reach, the mainstream. And it's pretty crazy because Binance is one of the most widely used exchanges. Again, it's also affected by regulation. Binance, currently here in Canada, Binance and KuCoin or KuCoin or whatever, both of them are not going to be allowed to be used in, I believe, Quebec and Ontario. So regulation can come in and affect your usage of these exchanges as well. So people in these provinces here in Canada have to close all their positions and take everything out of their account before the end of this year, or all their money will be lost. Again, if you just had your money on a crypto wallet that was not on the exchange, you wouldn't have to worry about any of this to begin with. Quadra CX, the founder, the supposed story is that the founder took everyone's crypto, withdrew it onto a private wallet that only he could control, and then supposedly he died suddenly. Right around when that happened. And no one knows if that's really what happened, if he's still alive secretly, if his wife has all the money. But it's presumed that all of it is gone and there's nothing anyone can do about it. That's an example of malicious behavior from an exchange. Anything can happen. No one is above questioning, hence why you just don't take that risk. Coinbase currently is requiring you now to KYC to continue using their platform. So that's another example of changes to not necessarily regulation, but at least their policy on the exchange. And this is more about centralization and gatekeeping again. So I'm not going to be using Coinbase anymore now that they're requiring more information and more identification and more documentation from me. CoinSquare was recently audited here in Canada, where they had to give all the tax information of their users over to the CRA, the Canadian Revenue Agency. And it was just for people who had spent or at least had $20,000 or more on the platform. But that's a good example of why, if you do KYC and you do, give all this information and go through the exchanges, you're going to be 100%, it's going to be up to you to make sure that that is all claimed on your taxes and all dealt with, etc. Not that I'm saying you shouldn't claim anything on your taxes, but if you're using decentralized exchanges, or at the very least exchanges that don't have KYC, there's a very, very low chance that you'll be affected by things like this. Again, not financial advice and not something I would ever recommend, but that is a big ethos in crypto. So obviously people are still going to be going to put value towards that. Cryptopia is a good example that was shut down after it was breached, and they lost all this crypto and stuff, and now they're currently liquidating. I'm actually involved in that because I had 1 million Doge on the platform when that happened, and kind of just forgot about it. But 1 million Doge is now worth a ridiculous amount, so I would love to get some of that back through the liquidation process. But again, just, anything can happen with an exchange. And also, I don't remember if it was Cryptopia. I believe it was. But I tried sending NRG to them a long time ago, and I was a noob at the time, so I didn't create a new deposit address. I just sent to the previous one, and then they said, sorry, you screwed up. We can't get your funds for you now. That is more so user error. But if I just had my own wallet, it would have been the same address, and if I sent to it, there would have been no issues, and I would have still had it. So that's just another example of why, having your own wallet and you're in control of everything, you're still responsible for your mistakes, but you're much more aware of the technicalities and all the things going on when you're controlling and doing everything yourself. And then lastly, as I mentioned before, regulation can have drastic effects as whether there's too little or too much, or it changes. And that typically will affect centralized exchanges the most, if not at all. My conclusion after all of this is simply that your best bet is to store your crypto on a self-custodial wallet. Personally, I use an offline wallet to be that much more secure, so I use the Ledger Nano X. But any kind of wallet that is self-custodial, I use Trust Wallet, for example, MetaMask, things like that. I'll be doing a full review of different wallets, exchanges, swap exchanges, all that kind of stuff, across multiple videos in the future. So do stay tuned for that. But it's definitely important to learn about these different things, understand why it's important to have crypto stored in a wallet that you control. And this is different from if you're trading on, for example, like Robinhood or Wealthsimple, where it's more so a stock exchange that offers crypto. Another example is PayPal. They don't let you withdraw at all. So it's like 10 times worse, where like you don't even have the option to. I just don't recommend trading there at all. Because if you're trying to avoid tax, let's say, in Canada, you could trade it in an ETF through your TFSA. But if you're trying to just go full crypto, you get it from an exchange. Well, you put your money through an exchange originally, and then you withdraw it, store it on a crypto wallet. Then you can trade decentralized exchanges, do a lot of different things. But that's the safest way that you can do it. I also recommend other ways to protect yourself and up your security for your accounts, using a very strong password, not using the same password as anywhere else. If you access your account using a VPN, multi-factor authentication, never open it, like good social engineering etiquette. The easiest way that you'll ever get hacked is by like opening an email or doing something foolish where you were just tricked. So never opening emails that say, there was an issue with your transaction, click directly to this, especially if you're not using the exchange at the time. I mean, if you're using the exchange at the time and it says, we're going to send you an email, then that's a little different. Mostly I avoid clicking through anything that has any issues with PayPal or Binance or anything. If I see that there's an issue in an email, I will typically just go and log in completely separately and check if there's any kind of notification or something similar. And if not, then I will just block that email address going forward. And then also using an email that is completely separate from everything else as well and has no identifying characteristics in it, for example, like your name. So if there's no way to identify that it's you, there's no similar passwords that someone can get from a password dump, all that kind of stuff, goes into protecting your account as best as you possibly can. But again, the safest way to protect your crypto is to have it on a wallet that you control, and more importantly, an offline wallet, like a hardware wallet. Again, I use the Ledger Nano X. I've done reviews of a few different wallets in the past that you can check out, and they're all pretty solid. They just vary in price depending on what you want. But again, the safest way is to have that offline. Some closing thoughts. I also included here at the end where you can click on the link and go and check this out. This is from 2018, so obviously this isn't super up to date, but they estimated that exchanges lost $2.7 million a day on average, and this figure is set to increase in the future. Over $12.6 billion have been stolen from exchanges since 2011 when you adjust for inflation. That is pretty crazy. And if all these examples and all this stuff didn't change your mind, then I wish you well on centralized exchanges, and I hope you don't lose your money. But the best thing you can do is take it off and protect your money. I didn't mention, though, typically you will pay a fee. They'll typically charge you some sort of withdrawal fee. I've always happily paid that. When you look at the amount of money that's been lost, you're much, much better off just paying that little extra fee. Plus, not that I recommend it, you'll be able to potentially finesse taxes once you've withdrawn and you do things in a decentralized way. Again, do not condone that whatsoever, but that would only be possible by withdrawing and paying that fee. So it depends where you're going to end up paying your fees, whether it's just a fee or it's tax or whatever. Again, I don't condone it or recommend it. None of this is financial advice, but that's always something to keep in mind when you're making these decisions. Anyways, that is it. Do you use centralized exchanges? Do you mind having to give your ID, KYC, all that kind of stuff? Do you prefer using swap exchanges? Do you prefer using decentralized exchanges? Do you store your crypto on a crypto wallet that you own? Do you use a hardware wallet? What are your favorite out of all those things I mentioned? Like, what's your favorite wallet? What's your favorite exchange? All that good stuff. Let me know in the comments below. And thank you so much for watching to the very end. Since you did, it would be awesome if you could comment hashtag #1ham in the comments below. And that way I know you watched to the very end. Anyways, again, thank you so much for watching. I'm Scott Cunningham, aka Scottsy Business, signing off. Cheers.